Good evening. Today we are going to begin the eighth and final problem solving session of our course in on Swayam NPTEL on user-centric computing for human-computer interaction. And myself, I am Spruha Satavlekar. I am a PMRF research scholar pursuing PhD at Educational Technology Department at IIT Bombay. Uh, so As a part of my own coursework, I have learned some principles of HCI. We had a course, a 6 credit course of HCI, human computer interaction. And this is I have been through from a computational background. So I think that this course has been a good intersection for myself to combine computing and human computer interaction. So, uh, conducting these sessions has been a learning experience for myself, as well as a good experience of getting to interact with the students who have taken this course from remote locations in our country. So I'm really happy that the course material as well as these problem solving sessions are being helpful to all of you. Thank you for all the feedback that you've been giving. We will begin our today's session now with a little bit of revision. So, in first, second, and third week, we went through the idea about what is usability, what is the Nielsen's definition of usability. So, in that, remember that Nielsen's definition of usability, we had a lot of parameters like learnability, that the system should be easy to learn, easy to adapt to. And then there was efficiency, which means that a person who has a task in mind to perform in our system, they should be able to perform and complete those tasks with respect to good timing. So they should have a good speed of completing the task. Don't keep your users waiting and don't keep your users hanging for a long time. Then there was memorability, in which we think about the aspects of our system which are easy to learn and maintain in your brain. So the system, if it is developed in such a way that every time the user comes back to our system, they have to begin learning and re-establishing their proficiency, it becomes painful for the user. So we try to avoid that in this memorability factor. Hi, Pran. Thank you for joining. We have begun with a recap. So now we are talking about the error factor, wherein we try to reduce the error for user. Also, we try to make them recover from the error that they have made. So we provide the system should be designed in such a way that it gives a good response to error. Then in terms of satisfaction, in a way, you can say that if we achieve the above all important factors, the user might be satisfied. So that is also a consideration could be the look and feel of the user interface with which we make the user interact. So satisfaction factor may also consider those aspects. And then utility, finally, the functionality through which the user has some expected inputs, some expected output. We are providing them that. So utility is another aspect. So all these five, I think 6 aspects are there. These 6 aspects are the indicators of our usability. Moving ahead, in weeks 1 and 1 to 3, particularly in third week, we learnt about the application layer. We learnt about the user behavior modeling with user state predictor in the application layer. So within the application layer, there is a block called as user state predictor, which does this task of making the system user centric. So a non-user centric system would have not considered what the user actually wants and would not have paid attention to all the 5 factors that we saw earlier. it would have rather been designed in a conventional way, the way we design softwares, thinking about our clients who are the main stakeholder, not the users who are going to be the main stakeholders in terms of user-centric design. Then we think about we have gone through these three descriptive models, which were basically kind of giving an explanation of how the user is interacting with our system. It gives us a brief idea about where the user might struggle, what is the expectation of the user. So those three models, we have also done a recap of these models in the previous problem solving session. I think in week 7 or sorry, week 6 or 5, we have done the recap of these three models also. So I am not doing that again. These three descriptive models were there. Then we began the predictive models with an example of attention factor. We started with that, a very small example, and then we went through a series of different laws. So initially, in welcome Sanjana, we are now just going through a recap of our previous weeks. So in week 4, 5, and 6, we learned about the KLM bombs. So here, remember, while we are doing this recap, there are certain things which might be useful for the exam from the exam point of view. So the full forms of these short abbreviations might be something that could be asked. Like there were some assignment questions about what is the M in the GOMS. So that was method. So those things maybe we can, even though they are memory based, there's a limitation of NPTEL exams that you can ask questions which are basically more focused on recall level. So these abbreviations, please definitely go through those when you're preparing for exam. So we learned about this keystroke level modeling, in which we were focusing on what would be the task execution time for the user while they are performing a certain series of tasks in order to do a big task. So we calculated the total task execution time with respect to the steps, and then we modeled the task performance in the KMM bronze model. Then we learned the Hickman's law, in which we were talking about the choice reaction time, in which similar choices are presented in front of the user, and they have to make the decision which one I go for. Here also we were aiming at modeling the task performance of the task performance is basically the efficiency, the speed of with which a task can be completed. Then we went through some pointing models. There were 1D, 2D bivariate pointing model, then there was 3D pointing model, then the constraint navigation brought us to the steering law, and we looked at the different versions of its law in this pointing model section. We tried to calculate the index of difficulty. The reason for calculating this index of difficulty through Fitts law was that we want to calculate the average movement time of the user while during the pointing movement or pointing action. After the Fitts law, we then learned about this typing model. So we tried to modify this Fitts law and fit it into the typing model to calculate the typing speed of a person. For again, we talked about this average movement time, and we were using the modified Fitts diagram model for this one. And then we also went through some understanding of two-thumb typing model. Then we looked at the multi-touch model. So here it was F Fitts law based model. And then here we were calculating the standard deviation of hits around the target, and then to what would be the average movement time if the hits is the standard deviation is some sigma a was there, I think. So those all those things if you focus on all those things we learned while going through these models, we were focusing on the average movement time or task performance. So we were talking about some type of time that was being consumed of user-centric design in B2B apps or websites. How do user research in those cases? Oh, okay. So specific questions, I will note them down. If there is time today, we can take those time. We can consume that time in taking the specific questions. But if there are any general questions which are about the content covered, then I can go through those during this time. I can fit them during this recap as well as the revision of this week's lecture. And in case there is something missing, so like for example, this question here, user-centric design in B2B apps or websites, we can have another video that I can post over the channel specifically catering to this requirement. So I will have to modify the content so that it fits in this specific case. So I will try to do that. Definitely within the next 2 weeks, I can get back to you with this. I will speak more about that in the final slide that I have, where to find this content that I can design. But since today's lecture we are completing the core problem solving sessions, so I will focus mainly on the content that has been covered in week 8 and weeks till then. Yeah, so we will get back to these queries. You definitely please feel free to post your queries on the chat or even on the YouTube channel if you are commenting and moderating those comments, so I can get to know what type of videos you would require. So I will create the content regarding that if I have the expertise level to address those queries. Okay, so coming back to our recap. So this much we have covered within these 6 weeks, and we, if you notice, we have focused mainly on the efficiency factor, wherein we are modeling the time consumed by the users so that we increase their speed of actions. In week 7, we learned about some empirical research methods. The application of this empirical research methods was to know how to use these empirical research methods in order to gain insights about user centricity in the applications that we are developing. We had very simplistic examples, and we also got query about so this query is good. For 2 credit paper, do we have MCQs or only fill-ups? Okay, so there will be MCQs. Mostly MCQs are there. There are a certain number of percentage of subjective answers given for NPTEL exam structure. Even here, the questions will be mainly of the subjective type will be fill-ups. So there will be a mixture of these, but you can expect more number of MCQs in the paper rather than more number of fill-ups. So fill-ups will be less in quantity, in percentage, MCQs will be more. Yeah, I think I will keep on looking at the chat, but I won't distract others from this flow. I will look at the queries on chat in a certain break time or maybe during the activity time. So don't feel that I'm not reading. You can keep on posting. I will definitely read the chat messages. Okay. Now coming back to this, we learned some empirical research methods so that these methods we can use to hypothesize what is our expectation out of the created design and figure it out through research method whether the hypothesis is true or not. So here empirical research methods, remember, these are done with actual users of the system, not with the beta testers or not with alpha testers, so not with the designers or the software developers. These empirical research methods are useful if you want to test out the design with test out the application with actual users. There were in the empirical research methods we learned about how to formulate research questions, what kind of variables are there, what different kinds of variables are there, and how to do data collection for our research, or then what type of statistical analysis and model building can we do with the data that we have collected. Now in week 8, we will be focusing on usability evaluation techniques, which are more concerned with without as users as well as with users. So we'll have a look at them. But before we go, we have some old assignment questions where we can probably answer through this much of information. So try to answer. You can post your answer A or B in chat window. Okay, we have one option. Yeah, okay. So this is accurate. Yes, A is the answer. Evaluation involves two activities: collection of usage data and the analysis of data, which may or may not lead to a model. Next, we have the usability evaluation activity now. So here in this activity, you have learned already these Nielsen definition of usability and all these factors are there. So using this UCC model based evaluation methods that we have learned previously, what factors in this definition are possible to be evaluated? You can write your answers in this chat box. Meanwhile, I answer this query. Where can we find previous model question papers? So there are no model question papers available for this course. Or NPTEL doesn't provide a model and question paper. So I will be talking about this in the end slide also, that considering the assignment questions that you have for this entire course run, and the previously conducted course run, which we have covered old assignment questions during our problem solving session. Combining those two, we have about 130 to 140 question pool for you already given. So all those questions are multiple choice questions. So about the subjective type questions, if there are any fill-ups, then I can't share any information about that. But those are also based on these MCQ questions that you have solved only. So consider those as your pool, guiding pool. Coming back to this activity, so out of these different list of factors, we saw that we were talking more about modeling the time, task execution time, right? So which one of those factors are we trying to model then using the previously studied models? Okay, now Dr. Roy has given his answers: learnability, memorability, and efficiency. Anyone else? So to a certain extent, when we look at all the execution times, we are talking about increasing the speed of the user to complete a task. So efficiency is definitely a yes. We are focusing on efficiency. In terms of learnability, we have not actually measured any of the learnability cases or memorability even, because while we are modeling, we are thinking more about the task execution of the users, and we are not considering only once in the typing models we considered the novice, intermediate, and expert typing times maybe, but otherwise we have not considered. And even the typing model that I mean, in the KLM keystroke level modeling, we considered that execution time for different users, different types of users. But when we were talking about this typing model through Fitts law, that is Fitts diagram model, then we again didn't think about the typing speed. We talked more about their movement time between the two key presses. So, memorability 7 plus minus 2. I am not getting the memorability thing that you have written, but learnability, the more we practice. So, learnability is not about practicing and then getting to know a system. Okay, learnability is basically a novice user has come up to your system. How hard is the system to learn for the user, new novice user? So, while we have done the KLM worms model, if you remember, we looked at the different typing speeds for expert, novice, and intermittent levels of expertise. For the novice, we can calculate the typing time that is required using KLM model. So that's why we can know whether the novice and expert have a lot of difference between them or not. That makes us give a kind of insight about whether the typing system is learnable or not to a certain extent. Time on task. In research, doesn't it mean measure that, or is it particularly about the Nielsen's definition? So yes, so we calculate the task time execution, but the aim of calculating this time consumed for task execution is so that we know for completing one task, each task, how much time was consumed. So actually, we are not interested in how much time the user is spending. We are interested in completing each task. How many tasks can a user perform within a certain time frame? So that gives us a more important measure of the performance of the user. So we want to increase the performance, and that's why we want to reduce the time that they spend on in execution. That means we are talking about their efficiency. Our learnability menu versus shortcut is not the definition of learnability here. Learnability here means a measure of ease with which the first time user or the novice user performs basic tasks with the system. The only measurement that you can do about learnability is if the expert task execution time was equal to the novice execution time, or how close it was. That was the only part that we could do. Otherwise, in other models where we are mainly modeling the task execution time, we were not thinking about whether the user is novice, expert, or an intermittent one. So that's why learnability we are measuring to a limited extent. But memorability we are definitely not measuring because we are assuming that all the users are, in fact, in terms of Fitts law, the important assumption is that the task is already known what the user wants, which target is of interest to the user. Then it is also known that the task happens rapidly. That is an assumption of Fitts law. So we can't say that user can be a novice and they take time over there in identifying different keys. So that is an assumption of Fitts law. Another thing we were talking about in Fitts law was that the task is mainly error free, and up to 4% error we were forgiving for the user. We won't consider that. But if the error would increase more than 4%, there was a suggestion that we should increase the target width and height so that the chances of missing the target would be less. So here we consider the error factor, if you interpret it in that way. But nowhere we have calculated any error rate for the user, right? While we are modeling using the previously learnt model. But there could be something which would give us some error rate. So then error rate is also somehow measurable quantity. But memorability, learnability, and satisfaction basically are not something really measurable in the sense that using computational models. So for those things, we have different type of models that we will learn today. Okay, now we will go to the next part. Huh. So here's an old assignment question. Yes, efficiency is the right answer. We'll move ahead. Types of usability evaluation techniques. If in case any of you want me to explain in Hindi, I can take some time to explain in Hindi. So because NPTEL content is entirely available in English, I'm considering that people are from different parts of India are joining and reading our going through our material. So I'm okay to explain in Hindi if some of you request it for any specific doubts queries. Now, types of usability evaluation techniques, there are two, with or without users. So, without users, it doesn't mean that nobody tries out the system. It basically means that those who are involved in developing the system, they act as users instead of calling out a different user who is not involved in the design system. Okay. So, even without users, when we are doing usability evaluation technique, somebody is operating the system and giving you the same kind of feedback. Or so it's basically also divided, so if it is human participant is involved or not, or the system evaluation technique is automated. So based on this automation level, there are the final types are the same, but the division is different. We will go through those automation based division in after a few slides. Right now, let's focus on without users, how this usability evaluation technique is done. So there are two methods. One is expert evaluation and the other one is model-based evaluation. Out of which model-based evaluation we have already covered in the previous weeks, where we talked more intensely about computing models and how computing models are helpful to our they take up the data of actual users only, but which was historically proven or historically known. So we take up that data as a training data and then we create model. And we don't need to now go to another new user and to create this model. So model based evaluation is basically a kind of computational tool that allows you to test out your usability of or evaluate your design's usability without the users to a certain extent. If the given that the system is kind of pretty simplistic in nature, we can go for it, or specific in nature, we can go for it. In terms of a very complex system, it becomes difficult to do model based evaluation and get a reliable result. But for expert evaluation, then again, there are two methods. So one is cognitive walkthrough and the other one is heuristic evaluation. So we will now go deeper into these two first. Expert evaluation, remember, expert is not the expert user that we have previously spoken of. Don't confuse that. Expert evaluation is basically somebody from the design or the development team who acts as a tester of this application. They are providing this they are providing feedback through this cognitive walkthrough or heuristic evaluation method. So even though title says expert evaluation, it is not the expert user. So we are not going to the user. That's why it's a category of without users. First, let's look at the cognitive walkthrough method. Here's another activity. assuming, so I will go through this activity first for you. You don't have to go through it. Just assume that this is the screen that we are able to see. This is the first screen of our application. Okay, and on that, our specific task that we have to do is we have to find the questions to be asked in cognitive walkthrough based evaluation from here. So now our task is defined for us. We are the expert users that will evaluate the system. The task for us is go to the find the questions which we need to ask in cognitive walkthrough. So now that I look at this screen, suppose I am assuming that this part of the screen that is in white, that is the my main application screen. So now I see that there are two things which are really in big font and one is in small font. So I will, as a new user, I might think that I have to go through this one. So I will maybe click on this expert evaluation first. Where does this expert evaluation take me to? Oh, it took me to a week 3 slide. So it didn't take me through to a slide that on clicking this expert evaluation, it didn't take me to a slide that I was expecting. It was not expecting. I was expecting to go through the go to the questions, but I was not able to do that. So I made an error. Then I tried to go to this another thing that is usability evaluation technique. Maybe I will click on this now. So I find again the types of usability evaluation techniques. I didn't want to find the types of usability evaluation techniques, right? And my goal was to find the questions. So now we will go to this again. So I'll go back. After going back, now I see this is something written in small letters. So I click on that. I go to the cognitive walkthrough slide, and here I can find the questions pertaining to the user experience. Even to find these questions, I had to make a click action. So as a user of this system, where I have to find the questions, that is the task that is supposed to be given to me, I had so many steps and I had performed some errors. I faced some difficulty while going through these steps. When I performed error, I didn't know where to go back, how to go back. Because I have used slides so much, I know I can go back to some previous screen. But if this was not happening on slides, if it was some new application given to me and I was supposed to do, I wouldn't know how to go back from one screen to another, right? So that these are some of the challenges that I will face as a new user. So cognitive walkthrough is basically an early design stage evaluation method. It happens in design part only. You don't need to go to the entire software development. You can simply create a low fidelity vertical prototype. So low fidelity prototype could actually be some drawings on paper also. So you provide some drawings, some sketches on the paper to an expert, and you can get make the experts or your other designers or testers, they can go through those paper prototype or some other form of low fidelity prototype and give you feedback. Essentially, remember that here we are talking about vertical prototype. So horizontally, we don't need to expand a lot. For example, in the vertical prototype, if you have given a specific task of finding the questions, you don't need to create the outcomes of every other different click. You can simply create the outcome that is only taking them to the questions page. So basically, vertical prototype is get them throughout the task sequence that is required to complete a specific task. So that much you have to create a prototype for. Other options you don't need to create. So there is this example, I found this very interesting example online. So I am going to share that now with you. I will paste the link in our tab, in our chat box. It takes about 3 minutes to watch this video, so I am going to take a 5-minute break so that you get to slowly watch this video. It kind of gives an idea of how to create this low fidelity vertical prototype. Then we will come back to this slide and we will discuss more. So please watch this video that I have shared in the chat window. I will give you 5 minutes for that. Okay. I hope you have watched the video. I think there are a lot of examples you can find on YouTube about the paper prototypes. Mm, ha. So, for a website, considering a website, say in the website, my specific task given for the users to try out is find out when this particular event is happening on the website. Say that is the example. So in that case, considering any website, you don't need to, you are at an early stage of design. So how can you design the entire website and give for feedback? Instead, you can think about the thread of actions that a person has to perform. Say first, you have to provide them a home screen on which there will be multiple icons. There will be a scrolling option, and below, while scrolling, there will be some text on a website. There will be some menu that they can access on the website. Now, consider all these elements, and it's an early stage of design. So, it is too much time consuming for a designer to create the entire website or create all these options in depth and then give for feedback, right? And my purpose of the user is only to find an event and register for an event. If that is the case, what I will do is I will create dummy icons on the website instead of actual clickable icons. I will create only images of text instead of putting their actual text. Then I can ask the user only the things that are relevant to finding an event, like clicking on events tab on the menu section, and then going to a particular date, choosing a particular date in the calendar on that events page, then thinking, knowing what are the events happening, choosing the particular event, then clicking on register for event, then what the procedure of registration. All those things which are kind of step by step, layer by layer, going deeper in terms of vertical movement of task execution. Those are more important for the user to test out, no, for testing out what is the user's feedback on event booking or event registration. So that's why we need the vertical prototype, in which we don't care about populating everything on the website, but we care more on the task that is at hand, and we build that our prototype in order to make the user accomplish that task. Then we know how much time the user is taking. Then we can ask the user the questions like what were the problems that you faced while registering for the event. So that feedback is more meaningful to us. So in that sense, it is useful for creating the vertical prototype. Then, so in this cognitive walkthrough method, basically we are using 3 to 5 testers or the experts, and we provide scenarios to them, and we give them a specific task that they have to accomplish using the given material. Like you saw in the video, you can also interact while the person is performing the task, but you have you are supposed to be not there. So you have to maintain that you don't give instructions to the user who is trying out those tasks. Okay. So otherwise the feedback will not be the true thing. So if you provide instructions, so you have to be silent and to perform all the paper actions if you are using a paper prototype. If you are using some prototype like Figma, no, prototyping software, then that need also goes away. Like we use these slides to navigate to show you an example. Nobody had to explain or nobody had to tell me where to click or what not to click. So some type of low fidelity prototypes are self-explanatory. This paper walkthrough takes a little bit of interaction, but maintain that your interaction is minimal. It does not provide user with the necessary information for completing that task. Finally, we ask these questions to the user by giving some questionnaire to the user, which they have to answer elaborately about telling their user experience while accomplishing the scenario. On clicking this questions, I am going to the next slide, which is cognitive walkthrough questions. So the example of these questions, ideally, they are questions like, are you able to locate the questions you are looking for easily? So thinking about the question finding task, okay? Was the wording clearly visible on a screen? So here some user would have given the feedback that the useful link was actually in small font, but the other links were in bigger font. So that was confusing to me. So that could have been an answer to this question. So this question is more useful. Then this, did you face a difficulty while navigating to the question? I did. I clicked on some wrong things. Then I went to the wrong links. So then I didn't know how to come back from them. So those kind of difficulties, I am as me myself as a tester, I can give to these questions. So that's why these questions are these kind of questions are useful. So while forming these questions, remember this factor, and you can ask questions about, was the system easy to use as a novice user? How much time did you spend in finding? So all these similar questions you can frame using this usability factors also. Remember these questions, while giving answers to these questions, expert users must give a detailed report on what they felt. So it can't be a yes no question. Like this question, are you able to locate? The expert user might say yes and be done with it. Instead, you need to specify in the question itself, elaborate your experience. Mm. Yes, so these are not necessarily closed questions. These are basically open-ended questions only. So these are open-ended questions, and so see about follow-up questions to these. Since this cognitive walkthrough happens with only 3 to 5 users, it is possible to take user interviews. And during those user interviews, you are free to ask follow-up questions. So that is possible because the number of users that we are interviewing is less. So basically, that is possible. Previously, when we have learned these empirical methods, no, we are talking to actual users, and we are taking feedback from more than 5, necessarily more than 12 to 25 new users or different users. And at that time, asking follow-up questions wouldn't be possible, so we don't do that at a later stage. At an early stage of design, definitely with 3 to 5 users, you can ask follow-up questions. You can ask more open-ended questions like that, like these. So, more examples of these questions are given in the lecture slide. Is the effect of action same as that of goal of the user? So you are the user, so you might phrase it as your goal instead of goal of the user. So these are some of the examples. These might be useful if you are going through the cognitive walkthrough method. Cognitive walkthrough basically is a walkthrough of the new user or any user while performing this particular specific task. Now we will go to old assignment question based on this cognitive walkthrough. So interestingly, we have 2 different answers now on our chat. So Pran says it's A and Dr. Roy says it's C. So I will clarify why it is not C. So the answer actually is vertical prototype. Why not C? Because in a horizontal prototype, basically you are not trying to do the vertical entire task flow. In a horizontal prototype, you can just show the main first layout and populate the entire layout properly. So you focus more on the initial, all the options instead of giving the vertical prototype in which you don't populate the entire all the options. You kind of provide dummy things for other options, and only uh, uh, design the specifications of the task execution related vertical options. So that's why it is vertical prototype, not horizontal as well as vertical. But horizontal prototypes are necessary for something else. So we will learn about that ahead. Next question. Yes. So cognitive evaluation is an expert evaluation method. Always remember, this is not the expert user, it is the expert anybody who has been a part of this designing team. Then heuristic evaluation. So here we are going for the horizontal prototypes. Why horizontal prototypes? Because here we don't explain what is a particular scenario or a task that the user has to perform. We just give the application to all 3 to 5 users. We don't give specific scenarios. We just provide them a checklist for this usability evaluation. This is not an open-ended thing. Please explain previous one. So in the previous one, we saw this example of YouTube on the YouTube, right? The example was of adding something to the given screen and then removing something from the given screen. So that was the main task for the users in the previous example. Now I will just go to that example, okay?
Light super light. Whoa, I love my water fresh glow. Pond Super Light Gel with hyaluronic acid. Super light or hydrating
Just a minute, I'm just
for a water
avoiding
fresh
the
glow
ad.
this
So I
summer.
will
Pond Super
share
Light
the
Gel.
ad.
Right. So I need to register with an existing Google account.
With a non
Assuming you're already logged in after registration. Put in my password, probably more options or potentially settings.
Yes, correct. So, not even I can say that layout focus. Mainly, you are given a particular task, and to finish that task, what are the steps that you need to perform? Those are the important ones. Now I'm kind of confused because I may have given a different example here. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm just checking to see all of you have gone through this video only, right? Yes. Okay. So here in this example, you were supposed to click on that plus button and then add something. You were supposed to click on the task for a long time, then remove it. So that was the basic task given to you. So here we never even clicked on boosters, the word boosters that is written over there. We never even clicked on this BIUS and top-ups, anything, right? So because we didn't need to click on those things, we have not seen whether that prototype has been made or not. We were given a specific task, so we were only considering with the given action. So when you are helping them, so that is why it is not horizontal prototyping, that is vertical prototyping, where you so vertical prototyping, you imagine that there is a series of actions vertically given. First this, then this, then this, then this, then that. So this series of actions is related to task completion. Horizontal prototyping is the entire website. It will be the entire website or the entire application. So that will be the horizontal prototyping thing. So here in this example, we saw this is a vertical prototyping. Usually, low fidelity you will do vertical prototyping only. But you can do a low fidelity because it is concerned more with the task execution. But you can also do this for horizontal prototypes. Horizontal prototype would be something like the first imagine this website that you are building or an application you are building, wherein everything is kind of you know where the navigation would go if you click on everything. Paper-based mockup. Horizontal prototyping can also be done using paper-based mockup, but that would be too much time-consuming to make. So instead of going for paper-based for horizontal prototyping, I would advise you go for something like Figma-based prototype where everything can be modeled. In horizontal, basically all the clickables are, in a very layman term, it would be all the clickables should be navigating to something meaningful. So that's why horizontal prototyping takes longer time, but it gives a lot of detailed overview of the entire system. So complex system is kind of presented. So initially, when we were looking at the vertical prototypes, we were talking about the simpler systems. Here we are talking about complex systems. Now while we do the heuristic evaluation, the meaning of what heuristics is basically you have some parameters through which you will judge the system. So now these parameters are given as this checklist to the users. So usability evaluation will be happening based on these heuristics, where a checklist is given to the user. Each checklist item will specify a heuristic to identify whether the system is usable or not. These 3 to 5 expert testers will click on that checklist and provide you with their evaluation. They will not be speaking to you in person. So what kind of heuristics are there? So we very initial time, we have learned in the first or second lecture, I think second lecture, we have gone through Nielsen's design rules, or was it? There were 8 golden rules of design that we learned earlier. These heuristics are kind of aligned to those design rules. Okay. So if you've gone through the previous week's content, you must be finding this slide very easy to understand. If in case you have not gone through that content, in the YouTube channel, I will try to link that. Yeah, right. Snyderman. Thank you. So Snyderman's eight golden rules were there. I will try to give the link to those views here. Yeah. So we are talking about these 10 heuristics. Basically, you provide the each user with these heuristic checklist, and they have to give you the this is being satisfied, this is not being satisfied. Then yes, there were Norman 7 rules are also there. You can go by either of them. I think most of them are pretty much similar, so it doesn't matter which one you are going to. Now, here in the Nielsen's 10 heuristics, visibility of what is the visibility of system status. Basically, you provide the user feedback of what is going on. You don't keep the user hanging and thinking what is happening, did something happen or not, am I waiting for no reason. So don't keep the user hanging. Match between system and the real world. So the user's real world experiences should be similar. So there, if the usually in the mobile applications, the next arrow is on the right of the user, right hand side of the user. Usually the back arrow is on the left hand side of the user. If you reverse those things in the standardized way of interaction, you are making the user face a little bit of difficulty to learn your application. So make sure that their real understanding of the real world and the system is concurrent. Then you use control and freedom, forgive the user a control and freedom, make them happy, make them able to go back in your system, make them able to repeat the task that they were initially doing, trying to undo. Then consistency and standardization should be maintained. So usually we have cross for close button icons. Usually we have red for errors. So maintain though that consistency. Don't make it ambiguous to the user. Then error prevention is something that can be done. I will give you an example of error prevention. A lot of times when we are filling up forms, usually the submit button doesn't become clickable till we have done some completely filled all the fields. So that is a good way of creating error prevention. Otherwise, the user will click on that submit button, then they will see the error that you have not filled this section. So this error can be easily prevented. The user can easily be allowed to click on the submit button only when they have filled up all the required fields, right? So that is the way in which you can prevent the errors from the user. This next one I thought it might be something difficult to understand. So recognition rather than recall is basically shape of a button like this, like this. Buttons are shaped like this on a screen usually. So in case there are really different type of shape of button, like some star is there, the user doesn't know whether I'm supposed to click on that star or not. So in such cases, better to stick to a simple this box like button which the user already knows this kind of user element is supposed to be a button. Even though it looks really unattractive to you, it might be something that the user is accustomed to, so that's why they find it simplistic to use. Make the system flexible and efficient to use. Basically, any level of expertise, like if the user is expert, novice, or intermittent, they should have a flexibility of going ahead of the others and or even going slower in your system. Then there is aesthetics and minimalistic design. So cluttering should be avoided. Yeah, nowadays circular buttons that is possible. Yeah, so it depends on which application, which screen the application is being viewed on. So in mobile applications, you may have seen some rectangular. Yeah, exactly. Depends on design system. Depends on the app where the screen is. Like if they are the users are operating a laptop screen or desktop screen, or they are using some VR equipment to view the screens. So those are the different dependencies. But aesthetic and minimalistic design is a must. Because usually the cluttering thing also distracts the user. So the attention factor, remember that one that we have previously modeled, attention factor would be less towards the all the different things that are cluttering the screen. So for that reason, aesthetic and minimalistic design is must. Help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. To do that, we have to produce some understandable messages, preferably in the natural language, in the user's natural language. Not don't keep it like system error 404, so nobody would understand what it did. Now that we have seen this error pop up a lot of times, we already know what is error 404 mean. But initial days it would have befuddled the user. So I had also produced some friendly advice on how to recover from those errors. What are likely consequences that user might lose data or not, or is it safe even though the data of the user would be safe. Just inform the user when they commit some errors. So while creating that vertical prototype also, you have to make sure that you are if in case the user is making some error, they get some error message or some all these heuristics are getting taken care of, even in vertical prototype. Okay. And last one is help and documentation. So it is quite required when a new user, there could be a kind of tutorial provided, or there could be a kind of manual provided along with how to use this system. Next. So I'm enjoying the conversation that is happening over our chat window. So I am just not continuing to that thread because you are already talking. So it's great. Next one is old assignment question. So B is the correct answer, low fidelity horizontal prototype, where complex system is completely visible to the user. Now, the key point of exam from the exam point of view is how I prepare. So I see that there are two questions, right? So one was about heuristic evaluation and what type of prototype, and the previous one was cognitive walkthrough and what type of prototype. So these two are types of expert evaluation. So I immediately think about this question of in case of expert evaluation, which prototypes can be created. So in that case, low fidelity vertical prototype, low fidelity horizontal prototype, both answers would have been right. So similarly, I mean, in this similar way, there can be some different formation of this question that we are solving now that can be asked. So prepare in that sense also. So till now we have seen all these types of evaluation, model based evaluation. So we have covered previously only with computational models. So we went through series of without user evaluations now. Next part we will consider about the with user evaluation. There are again two types. So one is empirical studies and the other one is self-report. So empirical studies we covered in the last session in week 7. Explain again. Can you tell me what I have to explain again? Which slide you were talking about? The exam thing or this these types of evaluation techniques thing? Okay. So I got it. So basically, this there was one question about cognitive walkthrough, which prototype is necessary for cognitive walkthrough. The answer was vertical prototype. Then there was question about heuristic evaluation, which prototype is necessary. The answer was horizontal prototype. Now, thinking of what type of question can be asked, you might be asked what type of prototype is required for expert evaluation. In that sense, there could be two possible answers. One is low fidelity prototype of vertical or horizontal form. So that is the ideal answer. That will be the ideal answer for expert evaluation. When I think about what kind of questions can be asked, I think of all the possible permutation combinations also. So there were many such things where we have seen questions about different types. So think about those combinations when you are preparing for examination. Yeah, so we spoke about empirical studies last week. Basically, we create a hypothesis that this design is will make the user's performance better or users satisfaction better. Then we make the users go through create the research question. According to that, we decide which will be the variables that we are going to measure. We decide how many users are going to, so we decide the sample of the users that are going to go through our system. Then we collect their data from them. We take some questionnaire, we give them the questionnaire, and we collect the data based on that those variables, and we try to analyze that data for their scores for that specific variable through the statistical analysis. So that's what we did in empirical study. Now, today we are going to focus about self-reports. So, what are self-reports? Basically, these are subjective or preference data ratings in terms of ratings or your choices of desirable systems. So, you can ask the users to give their feedback in terms of rating of the system in terms of some Likert scale, maybe of 1 to 10 scale point or 1 to 7 point or 1 to 3 points, depending upon your requirement. Otherwise, you can also give them choices of desirable systems. So there would be three different options provided to different users, and we can collect their opinions about these three different options. Then there could be open-ended questions. You might want them to go through only one single system and want them to analyze it through the choices of which attributes do you want us to improve in the system. So such things can also be given, because each user provides their data from their own mindset, their own prior knowledge, their own biases. That's why these self-reports are usually subjective. So, or it is a preference data. It is not. It does not mean that it is a very reliable data if you consider very small number of users. Okay. Basically, here in these two types, we are talking about actual users. So these are not the people who were part of the design team or software development team or testers. These are basically users who are not involved in designing. These could be beta testers though. Okay. So we might get the beta testers to give some self reports about usability. Here's a question from assignment. Yeah. A is the correct answer. Issues with user self-report. So now we will go deeper into the issues. Issues as in these are not the problems with user self-reports, but basically the challenges and what do we need to do to tackle these challenges. So one challenge that we saw was that we are asking them to choose attributes from a list of attributes about the system that they want to improve, or we want them to give self-reports, or we give some rating. So what would be the variables that we are interested in? Like, for example, are we interested to focus on learnability? Then the variables like ease of use and then struggle of use, those could be of my more interest to me. So then identification of these items and finding out what are the appropriate questionnaires that are reliable for the user to fill. So basically there are 2-3 things about a questionnaire. One is the content validity, that the things that you want to like, for example, if I decided that variable of error rate should be error should be should be under investigation for me for this reason, then all the questions that are there provided in the questionnaire to the user for the Likert scale rating, those should adhere with the error rate variable. Otherwise, it is not going to give me reliable results. So that is one factor, this content validity. Then again, there is reliability and then repeatability of the questionnaire. So usually, to tackle that, what we try to do is we take up existing questionnaires. Existing questionnaires are basically the questionnaires that have been tested with a number of users, hundreds and thousands of users, and it has been found whether the constructs used in the questionnaire are properly done or not. Are they dependent or are they independent? What are the is there a chance of misinterpreting any question? So that testing has been done. So we will pick the existing questionnaire for such self-reports. That is how this challenge is tackled. Then there is way of taking the self-reports at the end of every task or at the end of whole session. So this is basically two-point collection of data, which is preferably done to get a holistic picture of users usability. So the recommendation is go for two-point collection of data, because if you do only at the end of every task, then you will miss the overall picture. If you do only at the end of whole session, you are going to miss out the specification. So in the post task, that is at the end of every task, you have the get the average. You can take the average rating for each item, or overall average of the entire system can be calculated from this rating for each item. You can calculate the overall average. In post session, that is at the end of whole session, you can get an overall picture, but you won't get a specific problem that they have fixed in the time while solving a particular task within that system. So here the challenge is also that at the end of session they may not remember that what they performed, or what the difficulties that they faced in a very initial stage, where they have been given some. Yeah, so one thing I missed out. In user self-report, you provide the entire system to the user. You don't give the low fidelity prototype. You give the high fidelity proper software developed to the user. So that's why they have all the things in front of them. So then when you give them a particular task and take at the end of every task, you take a survey. There is also one hidden thing, that if I have to fill up the same questionnaire at the end of every task, it becomes boring to me, and that is one problem. The another problem is I start to know what questions you are going to ask in this questionnaire. So I start to think about what kind of answers I can give next. So I view every task through that lens as I go on solving the task. So that is the challenge when you do a post-task evaluation. But in terms, so that's why post-session works, because you will do it at the end of the end, all the tasks are done. So then you will give the evaluation, task of evaluation to them. But in this post-session task, they are not going to be able to give the specific problems that they faced while performing small tasks within. Just a minute. A suggestion while conducting this post-session task is that you provide the user, don't provide all the positive statements to the user to give rating to. Usually this is a good practice. You also provide them with reverse statements. Like there would be, if there are 10 questions, provide 5 which are positive to the user. Like this system was very useful to me. I could navigate properly to the place I wanted to go with efficiency or with ease. Some statements, these are positive statements. But if all the 10 are positive statements, if I am a user who is bored of giving questionnaire answers, I might just go on clicking on I strongly agree, or I will just, if I am a vengeful user, I would go on clicking all the strongly disagree. So it doesn't, the data user might corrupt your data. So you wanted the user to give the honest feedback, but it might not be the case in that sense. So these reverse statements prevent that from happening. What the reverse statements do is they test out whether the user is actually reading your statements and then giving feedback or not. Reverse statements would be like one statement could be positive one, like I could find the appropriate task point every time with ease, and the reverse statement would be like this this system was difficult for me to navigate, you know. Yeah. So alternative is the best thing. So you can it is recommended actually, if you look at the next we are going to talk about some of the questionnaires. So if you look at the SUS questionnaire, they are arranged in alternative manner. Sometimes you can do that alternative thing, but you know, a bright user might also find out that they have given one is positive, one is negative, one is positive, one is negative. So without going to system, I will mark strongly agree, strongly disagree. So that way also the user can gain you. So if you want to prevent that, you have to be more creative and shuffle them up. So shuffling is allowed. Yeah, avoiding any pattern is better. That is the best way. So these things, why basically when we go for user self-report, we call them subjective because based on the subject and how their mind works, they can give feedback to us. And we are the ones who are responsible to make this feedback giving so much, engaging for them, that they will give us good proper way of feedback. So yeah, so I am now thinking of the way we have conducted the problem solving sessions, and then every time problem solving session happens, you guys are asked to provide a feedback. You are supposed to fill the same Google form every time for every week. So I think about that myself, whether this method would all actually engage you or not, or whether it will be boring. So some users might give feedback for 1 or 2 sessions and then they will say that it is boring thing. I mean, how much I'm supposed to fill. So that redundancy also becomes irritating to the user, and then the feedback will be from a irritated user. So I have not been relying a lot on that feedback, but I hope that I have been able to take into account if you had some complaints. How many statements is better? Now, I think it for post task, because they are post task things happen multiple times, right? So the good idea would be to provide less number of statements. For example, after every task, if you target a specific variable for that task, say when the user is completing only login action, then you ask the feedback about time consumption, suppose. So that is the variable of your choice. So you make the 3 statements in such a way that their task execution time would be judged through those statements. Don't give them 10 statements at each time. That's the takeaway. So yeah. So we had around 10 statements around. Uh, so basically, what one more thing happens in a village. So I'm now focusing on stereotypical image of village. Okay, I agree that it may not be true. I myself conducted a study in my locality, and I had to provide a translation along with all the questions. I had to provide simplified versions of the different words that were used also. So the remember that this questionnaire also has to be user friendly or user centric. Otherwise, the user will not give you correct feedback. Will not be able to give you correct feedback. So that is true. For post task, it is recommended to give maximum 3-4 questions at each task, not more than that. For post session, you can definitely give 10 statements. Now, one thing that you can do is make all the statements, all the feedback giving again. we previously talked about this thing now, prevent them from sending blank things. To do that, you can make all the Google form things compulsory, mandatory fields, so that they don't leave out some of the questions. So if you are not conducting the feedback on Google form, if you are submitting the users are submitting them on paper, you have to make this announcement repetitively and make them solve all the questions also. One instance is sometimes after conducting a big activity, the users are tired. So that's why they can't fill out your question or feedback form. No, they get bored of completing the task and then they are again given this feedback form. So the users are not there for research, even though we are there for research. So one idea could be provide ample breaks to the users so that they get some refreshment. You provide, as a researcher, you also provide some refreshment for them so that their mind stays fresh. Give some distraction in between where that distraction will not hamper their experience of the software application. So these tricks you have to do, and you always learn through these experiences. So first time this important thing happened to me that my users might were at a chance of getting they didn't understand the question. So because my users were kids, they were not afraid to ask me, ma'am, what does this mean? But if the users are adults might come up with this sense of self awareness, so they may not ask you that they need a translation. Sometimes these things happen, and we learn through our experience of what is the crowd, how to handle them, how to make them submit the right feedback. That's why it is critical to remember that these user self reports are self subjective. So that's why you need to give I like one way I can suggest, before you go on conducting the user and self reports study, you basically take a pilot, one or two, ask one or two of your friends who are not familiar with the software to go through this feedback giving session. So when you conduct this small scale pilot, you understand what are the difficulties that these one or two people who are familiar to you have faced. And since they are friends, so they can give you feedback of this was boring, just change the order. No, I got really bored of this, or I couldn't understand the question. So these friends will help you understand whether in the pilot itself, if there are problems the people will face. So that is one way of tackling that question also. So then you conduct a study with multiple people. User self reports, basically, since we are doing something quantifiable, I would recommend go for more than 5 to 25, more than 25 range of users when we are collecting the user self reports. Now, some of these questionnaires they have given, and also remember that these questionnaires have been asked in the assignment questionnaire. There are assignment questions based on these questionnaires. So definitely check out the different questionnaires if it is possible for you. For post task, there are after scenario questionnaire and expectation measure. This ASQ, there was one question about this Albert and Dixon and ASQ questionnaires. In today this year's assignment as well as previous year's assignment. So we'll cover the previous year assignment question today. There is a detailed explanation of the system usability scale, what the scale has, what are the items in the scale. So I think I didn't repeat this in my slides because sir has covered it very nicely in his slides. So basically, it is a as is explanation of all these questionnaires. Now, depending upon what if it is a computer system that the users are using, you might go for computer system usability questionnaire. If it is a mobile application, you might choose this. Or if you are focusing mainly on the user satisfaction, then you might think about using this. So it depends on what is of interest to you, go through the questionnaire items and then judge for yourself which one is most suitable for you. That would be the best way to, and don't just go by your own gut feeling. Take somebody else's opinion also. Share that these are the items that I want the user to give their subjective opinion on. Do these items seem sufficient or not? So not only sufficient or not, you also ask them whether the particular user group will understand these items or not. So because all these questionnaires are in English, all these questionnaires are in proficient English. So you have to consider while being an Indian participant, you have to consider whether the audience that you are going to talk to are familiar with this level of proficient in English to understand this questionnaire or not. For example, I mean, how this is relatable is if it is an elderly person from even urban region, they may not be so much, expert in the software handling and expert in applying English knowledge all the time. But if it is a kind of because there is a study that digital technologies are difficult for elderly to sometimes grasp. So pay attention to those things also. Give them a paper-based questionnaire instead of, so print out these questionnaires instead of providing the Google Forms if your users are not so tech savvy. That thing you have to do, even though your application might be software, but you can provide the questionnaires in paper format also. Now, in system usability scale, there were 10 statements. You can combine these statements. Ri are the original. So there will be some statements 1, 2, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, which are positively worded, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, which are negatively worded. To evaluate this, you have to do the 5 minus Ri. Ri is the rating that they have given to each questionnaire ith statement. You have to minus it with 5 and or Ri minus 5, Ri minus 1. Basically, if the rating scale is between 1 to 5, so if they have given 1, they should be brought to that should be brought to 0. If they have given 5, that should be brought to 4. So you are just making the scale from 1 to 5 to fit into 0 to 4 here for positively worded questionnaires. And for the negative worded questionnaire, if they strongly disagree, then it means that it was not difficult for them. So it is good thing. So that's why they are reversing it with y minus ri. Okay. So that's all they are doing here. They are multiplying with 2.5 because the scale is between 0 to 4. So highest would be 4. So by multiplying by with 2.5, you will get go up to 10. But since there are 10 questions, so 10 plus 10 plus 10, so that entirely gives you a rating up to 100. So to do that bring that up to a percentage thing, this into 2.5 is done. And then that gives you a percentage score. Above 70% is the desirable thing. So if you get the overall average of the percentages to 70, that is good enough. Your system is good enough. These are some of the recall 11 questions. Let's go through them now. D is the correct answer. Then there are 10 statements. Next one. It's a post-task questionnaire. Post-task questionnaires are usually short ones. Now we have covered all of these different methods of usability evaluation. I'm just going to tell you their classification in terms of automation. So when we do usability evaluation, when if we are doing some semi-automated, going for semi-automated methods, what we try to do is we take up the user feedback from actual users, human participants in empirical studies. These human participants are the end users of our application. So we take the users, the human factors are involved in this. We have this semi-automated method because empirical studies are conducted with actual human participants. But once the data is there with us, what we try to do is we analyze based on statistics, and for that we can use automatic tools, which we can use online tools which are calculators of different statistical tests. We might be able to use modeling softwares like just like RapidMiner that we saw last year, last week. So we can model their answers also. So in that way, empirical studies are part of semi-automated because you can do halfway, you collect the data from humans, but you can analyze those using the automation. So that's why these are semi-automated. In non-automated, we saw the first one today, expert evaluation, and then evaluation with self-reports we did today afterwards. And the third one was automated method in which we rely on model-based evaluation. So those are done with computational models that we have so far taken. I think now that we have covered the week 8 content, in the third lecture of this week 8 content, it is basically for those of you who are interested in conducting human-computer interaction and user-centric computing research. So Sir has shared a lot of conferences, a lot of journal papers and resources from which you can learn more in depth about the user-centric computing for human-computer interaction. And he has also pointed out some of the ways in which your research will be able to, you can publish it. So that's the an interesting lecture. I have it basically summarizes all the week's content that we have already done. That's why I didn't have a slide about it. Next thing is for exam preparation, I would advise you to go through slides or go through the material that has been provided. Myself, I have prepared those slides using the video lectures as well as the transcripts. So, so equations and within the equations and problems, you might expect some of the questions like what does AF mean in a while modeling predictive attentive model. So equations and problems usually don't get asked. You don't have to calculate something, but you might get questions upon your understanding of that equation. So I think previously also we have covered this that you will not get questions about calculate the attention factor like that. Go through slides, go through old assignment question and current assignment questions. Definitely every week you have been submitting the assignment questions and you will be getting the feedback of your submitted assignments, and all the correct answers will be with you by now. So combined you have about 140 question pool. It should be really good to go through, keep them as prepared as your preserve. For books reading, Sir has recommended the one that human-computer interaction or user-centric computing for human-computer interaction. I think that is the good one for this course scope. But for more reading and interested reading, Sir has recommended some of the material in the last lecture. So usually the NPTEL questionnaires, NPTEL examination focuses on recollection and understanding based questions. Apply level questions and evaluation level questions, they were there in the so apply level questions were there in the would have been there like which method would you go for in this scenario. So those things you might get. Okay, so expect that also. Yes, so assignment question will not be given to you separately. These assignment questions you have to find out through every week, go to every week's content and compile them together for yourself. So that part won't be given to you ready at hand, but I think we have all the slides of the problem solving sessions right with you. And usually what I do is I keep all the assignment questions in this format, so you can see the blue slides. All those blue slides contain the assignment questions. So these assignment questions are easy to find in the slide material that I have provided. Okay. So if there is no negative marking provided, definitely try to solve all the questions, whether you know the answer or not. Try to attempt at least. That is one that is a basic suggestion that I will give. Don't leave out if there is no negative marking. Definitely attempt questions. 80 questions from this 8 weeks assignment that you gave this week, plus the problem solving sessions were covering the previous year's assignments. So you have 80 plus 80, but so it should have been 160. But I have not taken the questions that were repeated. That's why I wrote approximately for 140 questions. All the best to all of you. Lastly, this is my contact information. My I have been posting all these session recordings on Spruha Tech World. This is the YouTube channel. We are recording all this. Please subscribe because I am getting the information that 91% of the users who are going to the content and going through the content, they have not yet subscribed. So please do consider that. It would be really beneficial for me to, and it would inspire me to create more good, useful content. The playlist for all these problem solving sessions is available on this channel. If you have any questions related to that video, if you can post it as a comment on that video itself, it will know. I will get to know which is the. I mean, I would get the contextualization of where this question is coming from. So that would help me a lot. If you need some explanation in Hindi or some other simplification, some simplification is required, please post on the channel. I might be able to create a 5-minute video about that in the next this week. So I can't commit, but I will try to definitely do that. If I'm more reachable on this is my email ID. I'm also reachable on LinkedIn, but on LinkedIn I'm not very responsive. I check it very. I don't keep updated with LinkedIn, but you can find me on LinkedIn and also write to me at this my email ID. Yes, I agree with you. So initially, the subject might look difficult, might look simpler, and for 1 or 2 lectures, the content is also focused on design aspects of it. So that's why we think that it is more theoretical, but as we go even deeper in the design aspect also, we realize how the models are really difficult to understand. But I hope the computing part was not really too difficult for everybody. That kind of week 4, 5, 6, that was pretty intense for myself also, because I learned along with you. So I have not done user-centric computing previously. I learned every week to create these slides, and that's how I've been preparing for the sessions of problem solving. I'm really thankful to all of you. I have immense gratitude for all of you who have gone through the problem solving sessions and bared with me to know when I make mistakes. So thank you for that. If there are any more questions, we have about 10-15 minutes. And once the questions are over, we will end the today's session. Thank you for joining. And if you don't have questions, feel free to exit the meeting. Thank you.